Hello everyone. So as you can see in the last video, we actually created our registered user action over here. And then as the next step, we want to create the action for the remaining API calls like resend OTP, verify OTP, logout user and login user. So this is what we're going to do right now. Okay. And let me remind you what we did in the last section. We actually created this slice under our Redux folder. Okay. Auth.js slice. And inside this slice, we are going to maintain the state in which we are going to keep track of these fields, whether the auth state is in loading state or it's not. If we have an error in the auth or not, we are going to also store the token, the user, and if the user is logged in or not. Okay. Then we created our slice using this create slice. Okay. And this is coming from redux.js slash toolkit. Then we actually defined our set error and set loading. Now, here you can see we are exporting the reducer, and inside our root reducer, we are importing it over here and then combining it. Then this root reducer is being used inside our store.js. You can see inside our configure store, we have reducer, which is actually making use of our root reducer. So what I want to say is that whatever you are creating over here, this will be connected to the store, okay, and all of the data can be accessed anywhere inside components, okay. So what I'm going to do over here, you can see inside register user, this is a higher order function. We are getting the form data, which means when the user is going to submit the form on our UI, let's just start the development server over here. So I'm just going to run the command npm run dev. So let me write npm run dev. Now you can see the application is running on localhost 5173. So I'm just going to open up that. So let me put my browser over here and I'm just going to visit localhost 5173. And okay, so this is what we are able to see right now. And you can see inside the sign up form, we're going to have these fields, the user's full name, their email, and the user is going to type their password and again confirm it. Okay. So we are going to receive these fields as the form data. Now we're going to send that form data inside the request body and we are making call using Axios to this endpoint auth slash sign up. We are sending the request body along with this header, which says content type, which is set to application JSON. After this API call is done, we're going to get some response and we are handling that using our then catch and finally. Okay. So inside then we are going to handle the case in which the response comes successfully. If there is some error, we're going to handle that inside the catch block. And finally, it's just being used to basically make sure that we are setting the loading state back to false after everything is, everything done from top to bottom. So this is all. Then here actually we are going to receive some response, and from that response we need to make some changes inside our state. So let's take a look at our API. So this is the backend that we have created. Now inside the routes, which is our auth.js, we are going to actually call this auth slash signup endpoint. So what is going to happen inside this? This register middleware is going to run. After it's run, it will pass the control to the send OTP. So let's see what response we are sending from the send OTP. So this is our send OTP controller. And over here, you can see inside the response, we are just sending the status success and message OTP sent successfully. So this is all that we are getting. So what I want to do, I want to display this message on the client side, okay, using a toast. So let me tell you about this particular npm package that we are going to use. It's called React Toastify. Okay, so this is called React Toastify. You can search for it, and you can see this is the link npmjs.com slash package slash React Toastify. So you just need to copy this command and go back to your client side. Okay, now inside your client, you need to actually install this package. So I'm just going to pull up my terminal. Let's open up a new terminal in the same directory. Then I'm just going to install this package. Okay, let it install. And after that, we need to actually make some change inside our main.js. So if I take you to the documentation of this library, you can see after installing it, we just have to basically place this toast container inside the root component. Okay, so that is exactly what we are going to do right now. So let's visit our main.js. Now inside our browser router besides app, I'm just going to place this component called toast container. Now you can see this toast container is going to come from the React Toastify. Okay, and this is actually going to be a self-closing component. And inside this, I want to configure the position. Now the positions can be one of these. Like you can display it at the bottom center, bottom left, bottom right. So what I'm going to choose is I'm going to choose top right. Okay. So let me specify over here top right. Okay. Then I also want to specify the auto close duration. That means it's going to be closed after this many milliseconds. So 5000 milliseconds means whenever a pop-up is basically a toast is going to show up, after 5 seconds it will close automatically. Okay. And I also want to show multiple toasts stacked on top of each other. So I'm just going to set this boolean prop stacked to true. Okay. Now, this is all that we need to do over here for React Toastify, and then we can just move on back to our auth.js. And when we get the successful response from our API while calling auth/signup endpoint, we are now going to display the response message to our users. And let's see how we can do that. So for that, you just need to make use of this function called toast. Okay. So here you can see this toast is going to come from React Toastify. You can also confirm that it's imported correctly at the top. You can see it's not a default export, it's a named export. Okay. So that is why we are getting it inside the curly brackets from this React Toastify library. Now after that, on this toast, we have to basically specify which type of toast you want to display. So there can be like we can display error toast. We can also display the success toast. Okay, a warning. So let me just show you. If you write toast dot and then warning, then you will see the warning as well. Okay. Then we also have success. Okay. So what I want to do right now is I want to display a success message. So I'm going to use success, and inside this we need to pass the message that we want to display. So you can see the message that we're going to get from the API. It's this inside the response dot data. We're going to have this property called message. So let me write response and response.data.message, and please make sure that you are not making any spelling mistakes over here, otherwise you're going to get into an error. Okay, so in the case when we get some error from the API instead of some successful response, again I want to show some toast to the user. So I'm going to just write toast.error, and over here let's pass the error message, and that will be our error dot message. And now you can see actually I'm placing this question mark over here, and that is to make it uh, I'm just saying that error may be null or undefined. So in that case you have to basically go to this or condition, and in that case we are going to just display this generic error message which says something went wrong. Okay, so this is how we are handling the error and the successful response. Now we need to focus on the next thing, which is creating the action for logging in the user. Okay. Now before logging in the user, actually when the user clicks on this register button, let's see what is the next step. So when the user clicks on the next button, they will be redirected to this screen in which they have to verify their email using the four digit OTP which is sent to their email. So what they're going to do, there may be a case when the OTP hasn't reached or it has expired. Okay, so in that case, they are going to use our users. They are going to use this resend button. So let's create this resend OTP functionality first. Okay, so here I'm just going to write resend OTP. Okay, resend OTP. Now let's create this resend OTP function. So here I'm just going to write export function and then the name of the function which will be resend OTP. Okay, and in order to resend OTP we just need one thing, and let's see what that is from the API. So if I just go back to the API routes auth.js, you can see this is our resend OTP router. Here I'm just going to go to this controller, and inside this controller you can see that we just need email inside request body. So I'm just going to accept email as an argument to this function. Okay, and later on we are going to pass that inside the request body. So here I'm just going to write return, and we are going to return an asynchronous function from this one. So let me write async, and here we are going to get dispatch and get state as the arguments. Okay, now inside the body of this second function, we are going to now write our logic. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set the error state to null. So here I'm just going to call set error, This set error is the dispatch function you can see over here. Actually, this error, sorry, set error and set loading. These are the actions that we are going to basically, dispatch from here. So I'm just going to pass the value of this action dot payload that we are setting inside the set error. So the value will be null. Okay. So here I'm just going to pass null. And similarly, I want to also make sure that before calling the API, I am setting the loading state to true. So here I'm just going to write set loading. Okay, this is another action that we are basically dispatching from here, and I'm just going to pass the value true. Okay, so after this, we are going to now make use of this Axios instance from our utilities folder. You can see inside utilities slash Axios, we have created the Axios instance and we are exporting it from here. You can see that the base URL is set to the URL which is on which our server is running. Then we have created the Axios instance. On that instance, we have also added the interceptor on response. Okay. So if we get a successful response, we are just passing it to the next middleware. Otherwise, we are going to create this promise and we are rejecting it with the appropriate error message. Okay. So I hope that is clear. Now we can just go back to auth.js again, and here I'm just going to write the comment that we are making API call over here. So in order to make the API call, I'm just going to make use of this await keyword because I know that the API call, making the API call is an asynchronous task. Okay, and we have already marked this function as asynchronous. Now on this Axios, I want to call the post method. Why? Because you can see inside our server where we have defined this route, resend OTP. Here we are using the post method on the router. So that is why we have to use dot post over here as well. Okay. Now inside this, we are going to first of all specify the path on which we want to make the API call. So that will be auth slash resend OTP. Now this is another time when I am going to explain you why we are using this particular path, because you can go back to your server and see inside this index.js, which is the root router, we are using router.use slash auth for all the auth routes. Okay, so this slash auth is coming from this. It's going to basically match every request that comes to slash auth to the auth routes. Now, inside auth routes, we actually want to go to the recent OTP controller, and in order to route the request to that endpoint, we are going to basically make use of this resend OTP after auth. Okay, so that is why our final path looks like this slash auth slash resend OTP. I hope that is clear. Then as the next argument, we need to pass the request body. This object that we are creating, it's the request body. So inside request body, we just need to pass the email. So I'm just going to write email colon email. Okay. We can also use the shorthand method, which is just writing this. Okay. Now after that, we are going to now pass the headers. So here I'm just going to add headers. Headers is again going to be an object. And over here, the header that I want to set is called content type. Okay. Now this content type, it's actually going to be application slash JSON. Okay. Not dot, it will be slash. Okay. So now this logic is going to basically help us make the API call. Now after that API call is done, I want to actually change then catch and finally method on this one. So I'm just going to write then. Okay. Now inside this then let's create a callback function. So this function is going to receive a response. Okay. Now after we receive the response, we're going to actually do some things with the response. Let's also create the catch block. Now inside the catch block, we're going to again create a function, and this time we're going to get the error object. Now from this error, first of all, let's log the error to the console. So here I'm just going to write console.log error. After we do that, we are also going to dispatch set error action. So here I'm just going to write set error, and this will be set to the error that we received. Okay. And the last thing, which is uh, displaying the error to the user using toast. So here I'm just going to write toast.error, and the error message that will be error dot message. And if let's say this is null error dot message, then we are going to just display the generic error message, which is something went wrong. Okay, otherwise that will be specific. Okay. Now after that is done, we also need to handle the finally what we are going to do. So after we handle the successful and failure response, we are going to set the loading state back to false. So here I'm just going to again dispatch another action, and that will be set loading, and I'm just going to set the loading state back to false. So this is how we are going to make the API call. Now inside this then block, let's also console log the response. So here I'm just going to write console.log response.data. Okay. Now when we basically successfully send the OTP, I'm going to actually throw that message to the user. So here I'm just going to write toast.success, and inside this I'm just going to write response.data, and let's see what data, JSON data we are sending from the API. So I'm just going to go back, and inside auth you can see this is the recent OTP controller. From this controller, the response data contains an object which contains two properties, status and message. So I'm just going to make use of this message property on data in order to display the success message. Okay, so this is our recent OTP, uh, recent OTP function that we are going to basically dispatch. Okay, now after the recent OTP is done, let's create the verify OTP. So I'm just going to write in the comment verify OTP. Okay, now here I'm just going to create another function, export function verify OTP. And this time, let's see what we need in order to make the API call. So again, I'm going back to my server. Here inside inside auth.js, you can see this is our verify endpoint. First of all, the path will be /auth/verify. Then inside verify OTP, we are going to actually request these two things, OTP and the email from the client side inside the request body. So I'm just going to let me just open up my code editor, and here we are going to actually get the form values. Form values is an object which contains the OTP and the email. And along with that, when the user actually successfully verifies their OTP, we also want to send them to the dashboard page, which means when the user clicks on it, they will be redirected to the dashboard page where they can, start chatting with the other people and start making calls. So in order to do that, we are also going to get the navigate reference to the navigator inside this verify OTP function. Okay, so these are the two things that we are going to get. So let's actually create our higher order function. Here I'm just going to write return async, and now let's create a function. This function is going to get two things: dispatch and get state. Okay, now, here again, we are going to do the same thing, which is dispatching these two actions so that we set the error to null and loading to true at the start. After that, let's again make the API call using Axios. So here I'm just going to write await Axios, and on this Axios, let's see what method we want to use. So from the auth routes, you can see the method will be post for the verify endpoint. So here I'm just going to write Axios dot post. Okay, and then I'm just going to write the path auth/verify. Okay, please make sure that you are not making any spelling mistake over here again. Then we need to pass the request body. Actually, the request body is just the form values. So here I'm just going to spread that form values. Okay. Then after that, we also need to set the headers. Now, actually, the headers are going to be same exactly what we placed over here inside the recent OTP. So I'm just going to copy it from there and paste it. Now, after that is done, let's also copy and paste the then catch and finally block. So I'm just going to copy these as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here it's ending. I'm just going to paste it over here. So we are going to receive the response, and then this time actually we are not just going to, display a success post message. We are also going to we are also going to uh, dispatch some action in order to store the token that we are going to receive inside the response. So let's see how we are going to do that. First of all, I need to go back to the Chatty backend server, and we need to basically check the response that we are going to receive from verify OTP controller. So at the end, you can see we are going to send this kind of response data which contains these four properties: status, message, token, and user ID. This time we are getting token and user ID as well. And I want to actually use that token in order to update the value inside our state. Okay, this one. So what I'm going to do over here, let's actually write it like this. Const, we are going to destructure two things. The first is token and the second is the response message. And this will be inside response dot data. So I'm just going to write it like this. and we can just directly write message over here, message. Okay, and let's say this message is undefined or null due to something, due to some anything that may happen inside our server. So here I'm just going to write email verified successfully. This is our custom message. Basically we are hard coding it, but when this message is true, that means it has some value. We are going to display the message that we are going to receive from the server. Now, what we need to do with this token? So we have to actually create another action over here. So I'm just going to call that login success. Okay. You need to actually create it inside this reducers. Okay. So let's write login success. And here we are going to receive two things, state and the action. Okay. Now over here, I'm just going to write state. Okay, and what I want to basically modify is the token. So here I'm just going to write token, and this will be equal to action dot payload. Okay, then we also want to set the is logged in property to true when the OTP is verified successfully. That means user is logged in now. So here I'm just going to write is logged in, and that will be set to true. Since we are creating login success, so let's create another action over here, and that will be logout success. Okay, so here I'm just going to write logout success. Okay, and I think you already know what we're going to do when the user logs out. We are going to first of all set the token back to null. Okay, so let's do that. First of all, state dot token, and this token will be set to null. Okay, after we do this, we are also going to update this property is logged in. We are going to set it to false again. So here I'm just going to write state dot is logged in. Let me write over here is logged in, and this will be equal to false. Okay, so now we can also basically restructure that out of our slice protection. So I'm going to write login success and logout success. Now we can make use of login success action that we created inside the verify OTP. So inside this then block, I'm just going to write dispatch, and the action that I want to dispatch is login success that we just created. And inside this, as the payload, we want to pass the token. So here I'm just going to simply write token. Okay. So this is how we are going to basically, when we successfully verify the OTP, we are going to log in the user on our client side, along with displaying a success toast message. And the catch block and the finally block, they're going to actually remain the same, but there will be a slight change inside the finally block. Because you see, we have updated our store, but I also told you that when the user successfully verifies their email, we want to redirect them to the dashboard. So in order to do that, we need to first of all uh, make sure that we are navigating the user in some way when the user clicks on this button. So what is going to happen? So you can see we are getting access to the navigator over here as the second argument. So inside the finally block, I'm going to check if we don't have any error. So let me write if get state. Okay, on the state we have this auth slice. You can see the name is auth over here. Inside create slice, we specified auth. So I'm just going to write auth. And on the auth, we have a property called error. Okay, you can see it inside the initial state. So if this error is null, okay, that means this condition. If not, get state dot auth dot error. Don't forget to call this get state, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, so in that case, we want to navigate the user to the dashboard. So here I'm just going to make use of the navigate function, and let's specify the path, which is dashboard. So you understand what we are going to do inside this particular function. We are going to first of all make the API call. After we get the successful response, we are updating the store. After updating the store, we are actually will get to this finally block, and if there is no error inside the auth slice, we are going to redirect the user to the dashboard. Okay, so this is our logic for verifying the OTP. Okay, we are also handling the case in which the verification fails. So in that case, we are going to log the error to the console. Then we are going to set the error, okay, inside our slice or slice. Then we are also going to display an error toast notification to the user with appropriate message. Now the next thing which is remaining inside this authentication slice is logging in the user. Okay. So let's now also see how to log in the user. So here I'm just going to write login user. Now again, we need to go back to our server. Okay. So let me just go to our chatty backend. And inside the server, you can see this is our login controller. And we are going to need two things from the client side, which is the email and password inside the request body. And as a response, we want to send these four properties exactly same what we have sent inside the verify OTP. That means status message, token, and the user ID. Okay. So here I'm just going to go back and let's actually, in order to save some time, I'm just going to copy this one, verify OTP. Then I'll just paste it for the login user. First of all, let's change the name. So it will be login user, and we are again going to receive form values and navigator, because when the user is on this login page, let me take you back. So when the user is on the login page and they fill in their email password, that will be passed as the form values. And we again need to make some navigation when the sign in process is successful. So again, we are going to get this access to navigator over here. Okay. So here again we are going to set the error to null, set loading state to true at the start of this function, so that before making API call, that spinner will start showing up when the loading state is true. Now we are going to again make the post call using Axios, but this time the endpoint will be auth slash login, and you can verify that we are writing the correct path from the server. So if you just go back to route slash auth, and you can see we need to make a post call to the login endpoint. Okay, in order to forward the request to the login controller. So we are doing it correctly. Then we are also passing the form values, which is our email and password. Okay. Then inside headers, we just need to set up content type to application JSON. When we receive the response again, we are going to get the token and message inside response data. We are going to dispatch login success with the token as a payload value. And also we are going to display the successful toast notification. This time the this message, it will be something else. So here I'm just going to write logged in successfully, because this action is going to take care of logging in the user. And in this case we are just catching the error, and in the finally block we are checking. First of all, we are setting the loading state back to false, and after checking if there is no error, we are navigating the user back to dashboard. Okay. So this is all the functions that you are going to need in order to do the authentication. Okay. Now we have the backend ready. We also have the functions ready on our client side. Also, we have hooked this auth reducer inside root reducer. So that means the next step is to go inside the pages directory and then go to auth. Then we need to make all these forms, login forms, sign up, and verification working. So the next step is to make them controlled, and we are going to also add validation inside this form. Let me tell you in advance that in the next video we are going to make use of React hook form along with here for form validation and also displaying the error message and all those things. Then we'll be submitting the data to our API using these functions. Okay. And these functions are going to take care of calling the API and then updating the state and taking the appropriate navigation logic. So all those things are going to be handled over here, and we are going to also make use of the state values like is logged in token from our Redux store in order to basically do some things on our client side. So this is it for this particular video. I'm going to see you in the next one, where we are going to next complete these forms by making them, we are going to do the form handling, and we are also going to see that our authentication is working in the next one. So thank you very much for watching this. I'll see you in the next one.